Good afternoon, and welcome to the next in the series of Adobe Experience Platform Tech Academies. In today's session, we're going to be looking at identity in a privacy-conscious world, specifically as we start to look at how the world is evolving around moving away from cookies, whether that's third-party cookies or even first-party cookies. We'll see a demonstration about how Adobe are looking forward into the future, but also presenting capabilities for now as well. I'm Chris Atkirst. I'm part of the sales team for the Adobe Experience Platform, and I'm joined today by Steve Allison, who is a senior manager in our audience data and technologies, and he will be talking through the overview of our cookieless solutions. And then we will then move on to the demonstration by Wouter, who is a senior technical evangelist for the Adobe Experience Platform. And he will be detailing how we're able to capture data from different locations using different identities to really create a strong identity of a consumer. In terms of the housekeeping for today, the session is designed for an hour, so we'll see half an hour for the overview and then half an hour of a demonstration. This session is being recorded, and we will publicize the link to this afterwards. Please feel free to ask any questions and make any comments that you've got throughout the whole session. So as you can see here, there are two types of chat. There's a general chit chat, which is in the events chat. And then if you have any specific questions, please feel free to put those into the Q&A section. And then one of our moderators will look to respond to you either during the session or will look to get back to you afterwards. Finally, we will look to send around a feedback survey once the session has completed. And if you can fill that in, it will be useful in terms of scoping how we adjust the Tech Academies going forwards. With that, over to you, Steve.
Great. Thank you, Chris. So let's start discussing identity in the privacy-conscious world that we have today. Let me start off with this slide, and it's probably one that you've seen in almost every Adobe presentation ever. And it contains that wonderful word that we love to use, experiences. People buy experiences, not products. And I want to start the discussion here and talk about, what does that word experience actually mean? For us, an experience is the combination of all of the personalization decisions that we make with a customer. Okay? They come to our site, we give them the right advert, the right recommendations, the right content. But all of those separate pieces of personalization need to take place within a story that we wanted to take that person through. So when we talk about experiences, Adobe, when it talks about experiences, what we mean is that process over time of understanding and developing and continuing to engage that customer. And that's an interesting thing. How do we build up those experiences over time? And well, it's simple. You find out who you're talking to, you understand them through all the data that you collect, and then using that data in real time, you create those experiences. Except, of course, it's not that straightforward, is it? I mean, we've got all this data, but the data tends to be all over the place. People come to our digital channels and they engage with us, and we do things, and we try and make the best use of the data in the time available. But how do we track that? How do I know it's the same person? How do I know what they did last time? That's the start of this story. Because in the good old days, that's what a cookie was for. You set a cookie so that you know if that person comes back again, so that you can write into the cookie what that person did last time, so that you can store information, read it back again, and start to do that personalization, start to develop that conversation that you're having with them. So the cookie was, if you like, the first attempt at trying to identify and track users. And track users has two kind of connotations to it. First of all, there's track users within a session and between sessions. And then there's tracking users between different domains, different websites. That latter one we'll come back to, because that's getting near impossible to do now unless we have other forms of identification, but we'll come to that momentarily. So the cookie became really important as that method of identifying, storing information, and thereby giving us the basis of the personalization. But of course, the kind of personalization that I want to give my customer changes with the amount of information that I have about them. And actually, just with a cookie within a session, not using any other data, there is a surprising amount of intelligence that you can collect, gather, analyze, use in order to engage, make your content decisions, your ad decisions, and all that kind of stuff without recourse to any other data. But the problem is, we want to go beyond that. The next time that person comes to your site, you don't want to start again. So we need to think about personalizing between sessions, across sessions. And for this, cookies have historically worked for us, but we start to enter into the idea of a declared ID. Someone will tell you something identifiable. They will have a logon, and that logon, email address, telephone number, username, whatever it might be, that becomes your identifier of that person. And you can use that in combination with the cookie, and that allows you to store information either in the cookie or somewhere else and start to give better feedback. Welcome back. This is what you had in your basket last time. Do you want to continue that sale? Do you want to continue reading from where you left off? That kind of enhanced personalization, the re-engagement of customers, becomes available when we can persist the data. The problem is, though, not everything is an advertising and marketing scenario for our customers. We want to develop that person. We want to acquire them right at the beginning when we knew nothing about them and develop them so that they become happy, lifelong customers where we service them, service their accounts, give them other options, preemptively start to suggest things for them. And that's where we start to merge into using declared IDs and the idea of a profile, a store of information about that person. And we'll develop each of these ideas as we go through this afternoon. That allows me to go, hey, Steve, welcome back. This is what you did last time. Do you want to finish it off? And by the way, I know that upcoming, you've got this, this, and this. May I suggest this content and this content? That starts to be a really useful method of engagement, personalization, and an experience for that particular user. So awesome. We can use cookies, we can use declared IDs, we can use profiles, we can mix and match all of those. What's the problem? Problem, of course, is that cookies are rapidly falling out of favor. We've seen over the last few years some really fundamental changes to the way that you can actually use a cookie. And in particular, this is affecting third-party cookies. In fact, going forward, third-party cookies are probably going to be mostly useless for us. Not useless. If you can make them work, awesome, but it's not going to give us that kind of inter-session, between session, stitching capability to allow us to identify and track people through their interactions with us. And all the browsers are doing this now. Apple introduced the ITP, Firefox and Google, same kind of ideas. They're going to start removing those cookies from the browsers. And that, of course, means that we lose the data stored in the cookie. We lose that ability to track between the sessions, or potentially we lose that capability. Depending upon your use case, there are different areas that will be affected more than others. ID resolution obviously is going to be highly hit, because if I can't use an ID to a cookie to identify people, then that's a big problem. I need to find another mechanism to actually go in and find out who these people are. Advertising, prospecting, attribution analysis, all of those rely on developing that customer over time, seeing what works, seeing what you showed them, working out whether it was useful or not. That's going to be really hard if I can't track someone over time. So this loss of a domain tracking, cross-domain and multiple session tracking capability is going to cause some problems for us in maintaining that relationship with customers. So let me give you an example of that. Safari with the ITP. So the ITP in version 2.1 said that after a period of 7 days, it will remove third-party cookies. Okay, so someone comes onto your website from another site, from Google search. They've just been looking for buying a new SUV. They come onto your site. You can pick up that information through the third-party cookie, immediately start to personalize that experience and give them the particular SUV that you want. 7 days later, that cookie gets wiped, and when that person comes back again, essentially they're a new person. Now I don't have that single cookie that goes, yeah, still Steve, still Steve, still Steve. That goes, and it's no idea who this person is, and they start with the default experience. That's hard, but you can kind of work around that. ITP 2.2 makes it even tougher, because that says 24 hours later, we're wiping that cookie and you've lost that person. Okay, so third-party cookies no longer become reliable for doing that, but not all cookies. In fact, if you read in the media these days, you'll think that there's a major catastrophe and there's never going to be a single biscuit or cookie left in the entire world very shortly. The internet needs cookies. Cookies will still be a vital part of all internet transactions, just not third-party cookies. So first-party cookies become really important to our future, really important to maintaining that understanding. And some of you may have heard of something called the CNAME resolution. That's where we set a server-side single first-party cookie that will persist. And it's entirely in agreement with the intentions of things like the ITP for Safari and Google's recommendations for privacy and consent and everything else. So a CNAME allows you to raise your cookie identity to the main level of your domain. That will be recognized as being yours and therefore allowed as a first-party cookie. We can then store information against that, and great, we can still use cookies in the way that we used to before, or almost in the way that we did before. Because this doesn't solve the cross-domain, crossing between different properties, between Google search, for example, and then your website, but it does allow you within your website to keep tracking and keep identifying who that person is, and that's really going to help us. For those of you who are using the Adobe's ECID, well, ECID does this. It's really easy to create that into a CNAME solution. Might require you to update the library, but it's something that we can quite easily do. And that first-party data management now becomes probably the most important thing you can think of for your advertising and marketing and your collection of information from your customers. Okay, so we can use the first-party cookies in the CNAME and store information against that. Fantastic. We've already said that's really useful, but we probably need to go beyond the cookies and start to collect other information. And this is where technologies like the Adobe Experience Platform's Web SDK comes into play, things like Alloy, which you may have heard of, which is our JavaScript collection capability that collects your behavior or click streams and all that kind of stuff and allows you to properly understand what's going on with your customer. Because if you think about it, if you're wanting to understand them, knowing that it's Steve Allison and knowing that I have this particular item in my shopping basket is useful. But having that click stream, having the behavioral stuff, having that thing that says, I'm now reading this article, I just read that article and it had that particular ad associated with it, gives me more information. The more information I have, the better I can make my personalization decisions. So bringing that data on board becomes really important. And later on, Wouter will show us how we do that within the Adobe Experience Platform and some of the power that that's going to enable. One of the big things that does enable us to do is start to use that data as it streams. Okay, so as that data is coming in towards us, we can start to evaluate, use it, make decisions, take actions from it. So instead of waiting for it to come back or just writing it down or whatever, we can actually start to use it in the stream. And that might be things like streaming segmentation. As you click on something, as you buy something, I will immediately change the segmentation that you belong to, either qualify you in or qualify you out of something. It might be a machine learning algorithm. I might be calculating your propensity to buy something. If you're doing actions which look like you might be doing it, I can in real time enhance, update that machine learning algorithm and give you a better score. There are lots of useful things that we can do with data. And again, we'll come back to that thought later on. But this idea of using first party, second party, third party data has been around for a long time. That's what DMPs have been doing for quite a while. So fantastic. DMPs still have a role to play. The third party ecosystem bit, okay, we can't trust that anymore, and we should really stop using that kind of capabilities and start focusing on the first party cookies in the CNAME, and that's going to be a great continuation of the old way of doing things. A lot of the destinations that we use for our DMPs these days are based around identifiers, email addresses typically. So we introduced into Audience Manager something called a people-based destination, a people-based identity. The ability to use an email address, yes, hashed and all that, so you can't just read it out, but use a hashed identifier so that we can get much better matching when we go into Facebook or Google or LinkedIn or wherever it's going to be. That allows us to continue the DMP story, continue those use cases, and now start to extend them to using the people-based identifiers and not just the device-based identifiers that they previously used. Because if you think about it, cookies identify computers. Device IDs identify the device. So a DMP does a really good job at identifying and targeting devices. Now, we said earlier that if we wanted to properly understand and properly develop that customer, we need to start turning the devices into people. People-based identities is a first step into allowing that to happen. Of course, there are lots of other identities that people have. CRM identities, phone numbers, lots of email addresses, username, cookie IDs, all that kind of stuff. And managing all of those different identifiers is what the Experience Platform will give us. And again, Wowzer will talk more about this later on. But this gives us an ability now to start moving from the traditional DMP anonymous person towards DMP, but a known ID, hashed known ID through people-based destinations, which allows us to get better targeting, better personalization, a better understanding of that customer over time. Or we start moving into the full kind of declared ID environment. So for the people-based destinations, the idea here is, Audience Manager collects your streaming data, collects all those traits and things from websites, and as you're clicking on things, it's sending in those traits. We marry that information up with offline records, your CRM record or whatever, your loyalty card, your call center log with your phone number on it, your point of sale, which has your loyalty card on it, whatever it might be. That gives us that hashed identity. That hashed identity can then be matched in real time, and we can use that to make a direct, accurate match with you in those other systems. Great. That really helps us to start to understand and target people rather than devices itself. And in fact, our plan is to take this a lot further. At the moment in Audience Manager, you can buy in audiences and link those audiences through cookies and therefore expand your knowledge about that user. Well, we're expanding that throughout our technology to enable you to use any of those declared IDs as a method of which we start to identify people. And then obviously with the right kind of consents, we can then bring those audiences together, those data sets together, and deliver that out as segment information, as profile information, so that we can get better targeting, better personalization all the way through the entire workflow there. So we started off talking about cookies, and now we're talking about sort of declared IDs. And this takes us into the wonderful arena of DMPs versus a CDP. You'll hear all sorts of stuff around DMPs and CDPs. And yes, Adobe has a DMP, Audience Manager. We have a CDP, the Realtime CDP. Okay. CDPs typically are used to find and acquire those new customers. Anonymous user, don't know anything about you, but I want to kind of develop you, give you the right kind of advertising, and therefore get you to convert into a known customer. If it's a known customer and I'm using a profile, then that's where the CDP comes into play. In terms of use cases, though, there are only two meaningful differences between a DMP and a CDP. The first of those differences is a CDP resolves to a person, whereas a DMP resolves to a device. Okay, so a CDP allows you to have a profile of a person. The second most important difference between them is that the CDP allows you to go in and look at that profile. Okay? In a DMP, it might have your CRM record, it might have your loyalty card and point of sale information there. You can't get it. It's always anonymous. Okay, we might be using the hashed email address, but essentially it's anonymous data. You can't go in there and go, what did I do with Steve Allison last week? Can't do it in a DMP. That's what the CDP is for. That is what a CDP does. It allows you to go in and say, hey, it's Steve again. Last week, this is what I did with him. This is what he read. This is what he already owns. And that gives me the data that I need to make better decisions going forward. So people kind of break down this in terms of what DMPs are for advertising and CDPs are for marketing. And you've got anonymous data on one hand and you've got known data on the other hand. And you'll be looking at this slide and many of you will be thinking, yeah, my DMP or my CDP does all of that or does most of that, or the overlap is so big as to be meaningless. We agree with you. Okay? We agree with you. Going forward, there won't be a distinction between DMPs and CDPs. There will be a technology that allows you to use anonymous data to find and acquire, turn those into profiles, and allow you to develop those profiles as people. That's what our real-time CDP does. That's what this is all about. It's not about DMPs or CDPs. It's about finding people, finding audiences, developing that audience. That means we need a profile, because the profile is the only way of understanding our historical relationship with that person fast enough to be able to use that information when we do personalization. So we think that that's really important. And going forward, you'll see our technology start to converge with the DMP Audience Manager and the real-time CDP starting to merge together and become essentially the same capabilities between those two sets of technology stacks. Really important to know that in Adobe, we see those coming together, and it's all about just being able to find people, even if I don't know their name, find them, track them, identify them, and then use that data in ways that I'm allowed. Because that brings up an interesting three areas. Regardless of whether I've got a DMP or a CDP, I need to be having the data about what they're doing, the contextual information, fast enough for me to be able to use it in a meaningful way. How do I coordinate that between different channels, between the call center, between the app, between the web page, between whatever else I might be communicating with them on? Well, that's the job of the profile. Okay, we'll come back to that idea later. And all of this has to be subject to perhaps the most important criteria of all. The big question today is not the cookies and all that kind of stuff. The big question today is consent. How do I know what data I am allowed to use right here, right now, to make this personalization decision for this particular person, whether I know them or not? So governance of that data is hugely important. But also, our business models are changing. Back in the cookie day and back in yesteryear, everything was done by batch. We did email outbound marketing campaigns for next month, and this was going to be the title, and this is who it's going to be aimed at, and everything else. And it's fine, and that stuff works. It's worked well in the past. It will continue to work well now. But once we understand who our audience is, once we started to engage them, we need instant reaction to whatever that customer is doing. Okay, so again, we need to switch now from the batch mode into thinking, wow, it's Steve Allison. As soon as he shows he's interested in that, I want to be able to send him the email, send him the recommendation, send him whatever it is, in order for me to get that personalization and the engagement. So we do see a trend away from the periodic and the proactive towards the real time. Right, the moment someone does something, we need them to be we need to be able to react to that and use that information. So data collection becomes a really important part of this. I already mentioned technologies like Alloy, like our Web SDK, that allow you to collect this information in real time. And that's great, because that allows you to do things like, as soon as something happens, go and send that data somewhere. That might be send it to Adobe. It might be send it to Adobe and send it to these two other systems as well. Because if there's one thing that that is a fact today, it's that there's no single piece of technology that controls everything. So therefore, we need to be able to send that data to all the places where it is relevant as it actually happens. Awesome. We can do that. Adobe can capture those real-time event forwarding information, send it to whoever needs it, and bang, you've got instant ability to react. But we can go a step further. We've already said, this is about building experiences and engagements and all that kind of stuff. So I want to be able to go, oh, someone's clicked on that. Who are they? What do I know about them? What have they done in the past? Put that into a data packet and then send that data packet to whatever is going to make the decision about what to do with them next. If it's got more data, it can make better decisions. If it's got more data specific to that person that's actually doing the clicking, then you're going to hit the nail on the head more times than not. So that ability to be able to collect data, instantly match it to a person, instantly understand that person, what you're doing, and then send that stuff on in milliseconds becomes really vital. And again, Wouter will show you some of this as it happens. So that enables us to pick this up, to do the real-time segmentation, the real-time streaming, whether I'm using cookies, whether I'm using declared IDs, any and all combinations of those become really important. But it also allows me to set up this learning process. So now, as I'm watching people, as I'm collecting this data, I'm learning, I'm refining, I'm making it better. So the next time, the decisions are going to be more accurate, more relevant to that person. Right at the front. I'm not bringing this in, crunching it in my data warehouse, and then pushing it forward. I'm doing this from the front end. Okay? Really important distinction. And with all of that, governance plays the most important part. Governance is the bit that allows me to say, right, this piece of data that I'm collecting has been consented, and it is the name Steve Allison, or is my email address, or my phone number, or whatever it might be. If I've labeled everything and labeled what consent I have to use it, then I can write a policy, a set of rules that says how that information can be used further downstream. So that allows me to say things like, if I recognize it's Steve Allison coming back in and he's in the market to buy a new car, I can use that PII information and that knowledge about buying a car in my mobile application and give him highly hyper personalized content. But if I'm sharing that exact same segment with my partner, I can only give anonymous segment level information, not anything personal about Steve Allison. So now I can start to control what information I share and what level of personalization or anonymization gets applied to that. Doesn't solve all the problems, but it gives you the tools that you need in order to make sure that we are treating privacy with respect, we are GDPR compliant, we are consented for that use of that data, and we are enforcing the consent of that data all the way through the workflow. That becomes really important. And essentially, that's what platform does. Now, I've mentioned Adobe Experience Platform a couple of times now, and hopefully you guys are familiar with it. But if you aren't, let me quickly sum up. Platform enables us to collect data from lots and lots of different sources, any data source that you want, bring it together. I like to use the word cache it, make it available in real time from all of those different sources that hold the data. Not all your data, the bits that are relevant for personalization, for building experiences, for making the next action decision that you want to make. As I bring this in, remember it goes through that process of governance. So I push it through a data model that standardizes it and normalizes it, makes it a lot easier to share between other systems as well. But that's where I do my labeling. This is PII, this is sensitive, this is generic, you can use it anywhere, this is only to be used with this partner but not that partner. Whatever that label might be, label it. Then I resolve it to the person. So this is where all those different identities come in. I might know through the ECID that Steve Allison is cookie number 123, but I also know my name, my email address, my telephone number and everything else. So I can stitch wherever that data comes from, I can find that ID that I need, stitch it together and resolve it down to a person. And once I've got that person, I can start to do proper segmentation now through all of that data. Sequential, time-aware segmentation, logical segmentation, one definition of audiences that any system that you have can then use in order to work on its segmentation capabilities. That also allows me to feed my machine learning and find those insights. And then once I've found them, once I want to share it, remember my rules dictate how that content can be shared. And then I share that with anything that wants it. It's just an API call or a push away. And all of that happens within milliseconds. It's a really fast way of starting to pull together the identity of a person into a profile using cookies, using declared IDs, allowing us to identify whatever the ID happens to be. So if you think about how this comes together, customer privacy is clearly really important and top of mind. Consent management is going to play a huge role in all of this going forward. And in fact, getting the right words in your applications and on your web pages about how you're using identity, how you're using data, what they're consenting for is going to become really important. Publishers, yeah, they might see an initial decrease in the ad revenue as we lose that ability to use third-party cookies, but there will be new ways of targeting starting to emerge. So we probably don't see that as being a continuously, decreasing trend. We probably see that leveling off after we've got used to different ways of working there. First-party data is the way to go. That's the thing that you can collect. That's the thing that allows you to create the trust with your customers so that your customers feel happier about sharing the data with you. Teaching those identities is something we really ought to be thinking about. If you've got a DMP now, you should be thinking about, okay, how can I extend this now to start to stitch identities with declared IDs and make sure that I'm not missing out once cookies become even less reliable than they are today. Adobe, as you know, we've got technology and we're about to talk to you about how to do this. You've heard us talk about privacy by design. We've been thinking about this for a long time and we're happy to get into conversations with you about how best to approach your particular use cases. Please let us know. We'd recommend that start thinking about this now. Keep calm and carry on, but it's time to start thinking about it. Think about your first-party data strategies, but also understand how people are using your content. If they're web-based, if they're browser-based predominantly, which browsers? Okay, what can you do? Can you do the CNAME? What kind of service do you use? It might have limited impact. If you are predominantly through applications, none of this is really going to affect you. So again, understand your environment, understand the wording of your privacy and consent blurb on your website, because that's really important to keeping and maintaining that trust. And think about an ID service. Okay, enough talk. Let's have a look at this in action. I'm going to hand over to Wouter now, who will take us through a real-world case and real technology and allow you to see some of this stuff in action. Please continue to put questions and anything else in the chat. Otherwise, Wouter, I'm going to hand over to you.
Thank you, Steve. And I've been very active in the chat pod already, answering all of the questions there. And the good thing is that most of these questions will be answered as part of the demonstration that you'll see now. Can you see my screen, Steve?
Yes, we can see it. Yep, perfect.
Okay. So just before I start, what you'll see next in the demonstration is the usage of a real-time customer profile in a cross-device world. We'll be talking about identifiers like a first-party cookie with the ECID, but also about email addresses in a hashed format and mobile phone numbers and so on. We'll be using data collection using the new Web SDK. So some of you have asked questions already in the chat pod on that topic. We've implemented the CNAME tracking server, and we are using Experience Edge, which is a new functionality of Adobe, which will be released in the next couple of months. You'll be seeing a customer profile in action in the AEP UI, but also through the APIs. And then to finish it off, we'll configure a Facebook people-based destination, and we'll send a segment there so you can see the flow of how to use emails and hashed emails to send people for activation, for personalization to Facebook. So let's start. So you're seeing the website on my screen now. So this is our demo website for Luma Retail. And at this moment, I'm an anonymous, unknown customer on the website. and I'm currently being identified by an Experience Cloud ID. This is currently a first-party cookie identifier, which is well, a first-party cookie. It's no longer only a third-party cookie, and the way to achieve that is by implementing the CNAME tracking server. So when I open up my network view in the browser and I refresh my page and I look for the specific request being sent to Adobe, to Web SDK, you can see that this is my tracking server. I realize it's quite small, but it says smetrics.aepdemo.net, which is my own tracking server, which is then CNAMEd in the backend to send to an Adobe tracking server. You'll see more on that on the configuration in a couple of minutes. This is the way data is collected in an XDM format. So some of you may have heard about XDM in a past presentation. This is the new way of collecting data inside Adobe. So just to show you how that looks like, let me show you this. So this is standard JSON payload, whereby you can see all of the elements configured inside launch and schemas configured inside Adobe Experience Platform. So you can see things like event type, web page details with page name, and so on. All of those information elements are being collected in real time on the website, being sent into Adobe Launch, and from there to Adobe Experience Platform data collection. Somebody in the chat pod had a question on data collection itself, and should we move to Web SDK already, or is it only for AEP customers? So I want to be very clear on that. Web SDK has been released a couple of months ago in production. Of course, every customer who implements Adobe Experience Platform is expected to use the Web SDK because that's the way forward for data collection. But also customers who don't use Adobe Experience Platform should be investigating implementing Web SDK. Simply because it facilitates and simplifies data collection a lot. It helps you move away from 3 libraries. So in the example of you using Adobe Analytics, Adobe Audience Manager, and Adobe Target, you currently have 3 JavaScripts on the website, and all of those are different as the legacy JavaScript from the acquisitions Adobe has made. And they have now been replaced by one single Web SDK, which basically removes app measurement, it removes Demdex DIL code, and it also removes the AT.js JavaScript from Target, and migrates all of those into one single library, which basically facilitates the implementation, but also speeds up data collection. And also the way those solutions now work together, a lot more optimized and even faster. So the responses from Target are available even faster for personalization on the website than they were before. So look into it and then make sure that it's a plan to implement this in the next 6 to 12 months, because there will be definitely benefits today, tomorrow, and also the day after tomorrow. So let's go back to the demo. At this moment, this customer decides to go to a product page. So this Nadia Elements shell page, for instance, and click the Add to Cart button. All of these things are experience events, and they are collected in real time, sent to Adobe Experience Platform in real time, and they become part of the customer profile in platform as well in real time. So if I open up my X-ray panel again, you'll see that I've got a couple of experience events linked to my profile. So you can see product view, you can see the add to cart, and those are now collected against the primary identifier, which is the Experience Cloud ID. This is an unknown profile, so of course at some point in time this customer will become a known customer. So let's do that. So by going to the login page, I have the ability to fill out all of these form fields like first name and last name, mobile number, and email address. And also the opt-in is critical. Some people ask questions in the chatbot around consent, PII data, and so on. So GDPR does not limit the data collection if the proper consent has been given. So since May 25, every brand is expected, in theory, to prompt customers who go to the website the first time and ask them what kind of data they are okay with collecting. So customers should be opting in for that data collection and should also be opting in for which kind of channels they are okay to be communicated with. So in this case, I've got my opt-in fields over here, and I'll opt in for phone, SMS, and email. And by clicking the Create Account button, my profile will now be created in Adobe Experience Platform, and you'll see additional identifiers become part of my customer profile as well in real time. Let's see if that has been collected. So you can already see my email ID, my mobile phone number, and you can also see my profile information. So this X-ray panel is basically an implementation of our profile APIs in Adobe Experience Platform. So I'll be demonstrating them as well in a couple of minutes. Because basically any kind of application has the ability to use, for instance, an email address or a mobile phone number to query the profile in platform and to retrieve information from platform to personalize its own channel. So obvious use cases include things like call center optimization, call deflection, upsell scenarios in the call center, and so much more. So I'm a known customer. I've got a couple of product views on the website. Let's have a look at the mobile application. So let me share my screen on my mobile device. There we go. So on my mobile device, I've got this Luma Retail mobile application as well. At this moment, I'm an unknown anonymous customer inside the application, and I'm going to change that by going to this login page. So I'm going to log in with my email address that I was using on the website. A very handy long email address. @gmail.com. So now I'm logging in on the mobile application, and you're seeing that this customer profile on the mobile application is now merged in real time with the profile on the website. And you can see all of my recent browse information from the website already inside the application. So obviously inside the application, I'll now go and have a view on this product. For instance, over here, the Zeppelin Yoga Pants, the product view on the mobile application is also sent into Adobe Experience Platform. And because of the magic of the identity graph, which is basically merging these profiles in real time with based on the email address, we're going to see that the product view of the Zeppelin Yoga Pants is going to pop up on my profile as well on the mobile application. So that's real-time cross-device data collection happening as we talk about it. It's real-time, and it makes it possible to retrieve that profile to any other mechanism as well in real time. Let's go back to the desktop computer. There we go. Back on the desktop computer. Let me refresh my page and see if the data has been collected. Not yet, but it's coming. So let's continue with the demo. This is now the Adobe Experience Platform user interface. In here, you have the ability to ingest data against sources, to use destinations, which we'll do in a couple of minutes, but also to retrieve a customer profile and to visualize it completely in the UI. So this is really the marketer view of who a customer is, what they have done, which segments they qualify for, and so much more. So to retrieve this profile, I need to select a namespace. The namespace is basically a type of identifier. So the type of identifier is the email address, the mobile phone number, the ECID, and so much more. So I'm going to pick the email address as an example. Go. Email address. And now I'll just copy email address from X-ray panel. And now you'll see the profile inside Adobe Experience Platform, which basically has a customizable view. So people who have seen this in action previously, this dashboard used to be a fixed dashboard, but now with this modify option, you can basically fine-tune it and edit it just to show the field that you are looking for. But at this moment, it's showcasing basic attributes, my identities. So you can see my full identity graph, which includes an ECID from the website, but also an ECID from the mobile application, and also my other identifiers from the website. You can also see that my email address is being stored in a hashed format. So obviously brands have the choice to decide how to store email addresses. but it's definitely a best practice to use hashing and basically collect the email address in this way. You'll see why in a couple of minutes when we talk about Facebook, people-based destinations, and so on. And same thing for channel preferences. So my opt-in and opt-out information is part of this profile as well. And the whole logic of this single customer profile inside Adobe Experience Platform is to make sure that you have one location and one location alone, which serves as the brain for communication and orchestration going forward. So basically any application that you use for activation, whether it's for on-site personalization or email, push, SMS, or off-site to paid media, search, or social, all of those solutions should be benefiting from this one single customer profile going forward. And that's why the opt-in element is crucial here, because we will automatically apply the opt-in in the activation cycle. So a customer who did not select email as an opt-in, they would not become part of a segment exchange or a profile exchange towards email solutions connected to Adobe Experience Platform. This form of the data governance, data usage labeling and enforcement, the dual framework that we've worked on for the last couple of years, implemented in Adobe Experience Platform. And you'll see things like policies on the left side of my screen. These policies will, when enabled, they will enforce specific types of handling data within platform and within the solutions that want to consume it. So you can see them on my screen. Restrict email targeting, restrict data science. Let me give you an example. Today, a data scientist in your organization, when they look at the data that they have on customers, they have the ability to look at first name and last name and other sensitive information. That information isn't really needed for data science at all. So you should have a mechanism to restrict access to specific fields of data, and that happens inside Experience Platform. You map these fields against a specific policy of, in this case, the label C9, which restricts the data science, and automatically a data scientist working inside Adobe Experience Platform, consuming that data for data science purposes, will not be seeing that data at all. So that's really giving your privacy officer of your enterprise, of your company, a satisfaction or a safe feeling that data cannot be misused or accessed by people in your company. Let me go back to the profile view. So inside my customer profile, you also have, so this is the quick view. You've got the attributes, which basically showcase all the information we have on this customer. So that's a list of elements. If you want to be really techy, you can even see the whole JSON payload being returned by the APIs. But it's not just about profile information, it's also about events, what the customer has done. And I think this is the most powerful view inside Adobe Experience Platform, showcasing to you what the customer has done, when they've done it in a time-sequenced manner. So this is really the whole history, the whole path, the whole journey of your customer with your brand since the first interaction, maybe potentially years ago. So you can see things like page views, you can see, in this case, I was on the Luma Retail homepage, and you can see what kind of information is collected in that process. Of course, under consent, so the customer needs to opt in for the data to be collected, but if the consent has been given, things are collected inside Adobe Experience Platform that you can then use for segmentation and personalization afterwards. And lastly, this has been a popular request from many customers over the years. I think many of you are operating in a very siloed environment, whereby you've got maybe 5, maybe 10 different solutions that you use for marketing. All of them have their own segment environment, and it's very difficult or almost impossible to have an overview of what segments a customer actually qualifies for across all those solutions. Inside Adobe Experience Platform, with the view of the segment membership, that's now possible. So these segments can be Adobe segments, but they can also be powered by external solutions. We then ingest the segment memberships inside the brain for communication and orchestration, so that you as a marketer have the ability to know specifically what segments your customer is part of. So all of that basically gives lots of information, lots of valuable information inside Adobe. I wanted to quickly jump to Web SDK to launch, just to show you the configuration of that Web SDK, which is handling the first-party tracking and the CM configuration. So those who have gone through enablement online on Web SDK will have seen that you have a new extension available inside Launch, which allows you to configure the Web SDK. And this SDK, this configuration, basically manages the edge domain. So in this case, you can find my CNAMED first-party tracking server. You can see things like edge configuration. This will be a crucial element going forward. So before Web SDK and before Experience Edge, every Adobe solution had their own specific edge servers. And we are now migrating all of those servers into one specific infrastructure, which is the edge. And from the edge, we have the concept of edge configurations. And this makes it possible to do one single configuration on how data is collected for your organization, but it will also offer so many more functionalities. Some of you might have heard about Launch server-side forwarding. This has been a popular request again from customers, so many customers who say that we already collect data with Adobe, that data has high value and is properly structured and so on. And now we want to send that data to other solutions. We want to be able to send it, for instance, to Pegasystems or to SAS or to Google Cloud Platform and so much more. So from the edge configuration, you'll have the ability by the end of the year to set up Launch server-side forwarding, which will make it possible to send a unique payload, so the one that I was showcasing over here. You'll be able to pick up that payload in Launch server-side forwarding and send it to a destination of choice, which will be an HTTP API endpoint. It can be a Lambda function, it can be a Microsoft Azure function or a Google function, and so much more. So basically positioning Adobe Experience Platform as the single brain for communication and orchestration, but also as the pass-through, the traffic cop, which decides which traffic, which information gets sent to which kind of application inside your whole enterprise ecosystem, and not just Adobe. So that's really a crucial element of information. Adobe Experience Platform is a platform built by Adobe, but not just for Adobe. And it's really intended to fit nicely into your ecosystem. And the currently ongoing implementations of Adobe Experience Platform showcase that versatility. We've implemented things like Pega, NBA integration a couple of times. We're now in the process of implementing Google Cloud Platform integration with a different customer. And all of these things, which used to take months, now take nothing more than a couple of days to implement. And that's really the power and the value of platform. Additionally, some of you have asked questions in the chat bot on opt-in and privacy and so on. So the default opt-in behavior can be managed also in Web SDK configuration. So you can either decide to automatically include data collection, that's a choice you can make, but also you can set it to pending, which means that privacy-sensitive data will not be collected until the user actually gives consent. And then lastly, on the identity level, you've got this use third-party cookies field, which makes it possible to disable third-party cookies completely. So that's no longer a dependency inside the Adobe ecosystem. So next, we were talking about customers and segments and activating those to destinations. So as we move forward in this increasingly cookie-less world, even though most likely we'll have first-party cookies for the foreseeable time, still relevant to understand that Adobe Experience Platform is future-proof and has the ability to collect data without an ECID. So we can simply collect data against an email address or mobile phone number or any other identifier of choice. And we can also activate data to select destinations using those specific identifiers. So if I have a look at destinations, you'll see the destinations available currently as part of our Realtime CDP application service. We have about 60 to 70 destinations available and more coming every month. So if we have a look at the ones that are relevant in this context, you have things like Google Customer Match, an important one. So before, and I think most of you who are using a DMP, you are using a DMP to send third-party cookie-dependent calls to Google marketing list for search advertising. Google Customer Match gives you the same functionality, but now using a declared identifier, like an email address or a mobile phone number or more. And the same thing is valid for Facebook. If I pick up this Facebook social media destination, I have the ability to create, for instance, a new account. can connect to destination, and this will now open an OAuth configuration window with Facebook, which takes a couple of seconds. And this will connect to my Facebook account. And from there, I have the ability to basically allow that specific linking to happen. So let me do that. And I've now allowed the connection between Adobe Experience Platform and my Facebook business account. And by doing that, you'll now see that inside Experience Platform, in my destination view, the connection is finished. Time to load. There we go. My account is now successfully connected to Facebook. And then the next step, I'm asked to name my account. So I need to also enter my account ID, and that's basically my Facebook business account ID. So let me open up that Facebook UI. And from there, there's a couple of steps to take to link this properly, which are all documented already on our help pages. But the last step involves picking this identifier over here, which identifies your business account in Facebook, and then basically pasting it over here, adding the ACT prefix, and then pasting it. And from there, I can create my destination. And you can see that Steve was talking about the data governance inside the Experience Platform, shown you the policies that you have available in there as well. So in the marketing use case field, you can select those policies, and from there, decide how Facebook will be sending data and receiving data which is properly governed. In the Create Destination flow, I'll now have to select my destination, my segments. So I can pick up my Nadia Elements shell segment, for instance, and click Next. And then the next step in the workflow is to basically map the identity. And that's where you can see the identity fields and the people-based destinations come to life. At this moment, I need to go into the XDM union profile schema, and from there select my email ID fields. That will then properly match them against the field needed by Facebook to deliver personalization to a specific user. So as a brand, you have the choice to use either the legible email or the hashed email. That's up to you. But once that has happened, well, your segment needs to be mapped, and you need to select the origin of the data. So that's important for Facebook's data policies. In this case, we got it from customers directly. And then my flow is finished. I've got my destination set up and my segment selected, and I can simply start the activation process. You'll see much more of this people-based destination configuration in the future. We already have LinkedIn almost ready in the backend, but we're working on other platforms like Twitter and Instagram and Pinterest and so on. So step by step, these will be released as and when they are ready. And this is really showing to you that activation in the future won't be exclusively based on third-party cookies. Let me stop my demo here. I had a couple of more things on journey orchestration, which also allows you to do activation towards email, SMS, and push channels. But we'll have follow-up sessions later this month and later this year on journey orchestration as well. So let me keep that for the next session. So, Steve, over to you. Thank you very much, everybody, for taking the time to dial in, and wishing you a happy, pleasant day. And let's start later. Thanks a lot.